Good afternoon to you. 3:06 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up today at 4:30, Harmeet Dillon joins us, a California attorney with a perspective on a different California attorney. She'll tell us all about Kamala Harris and what we should make of her candidacy for president. And then at 5 o'clock, we're joined by an immigration expert at the America First Policy Institute. Rob Law is here. Rob will weigh in on the effort by the media and the Kamala campaign. That's weird to say. Right now, pretending she was never the border czar. Never. Border what? No, never had that job. You can join us at 888-630-9625. 888-630-WMAL. FBI Director Christopher Wray did appear before Congress today, testifying before the House Judiciary Committee. This is the annual assessment of the FBI. But this one took a very different turn because it was all about what is the FBI doing, or it should have been at least. What is the FBI doing as it looks into the man who attempted to assassinate Donald Trump on July 13th and did kill Corey Comparator and injure two others? What is the FBI finding as it tasks hundreds of officials, according to the FBI director, with investigating this? Christopher Wray did come with some answers today. And indicated that he was willing to share more information than you might usually get on an ongoing investigation. Here's some of it.
Starting somewhere around July 6th or so, he became very focused on former President Trump and this rally. And so one of the things that I can share here today that has not been shared yet is that we've just in the last couple of days found that from our review, to your point about devices, analysis of a laptop that the investigation ties to the shooter reveals that on July 6th, he did a Google search for, quote, how far away was Oswald from Kennedy? And so that's a search that obviously is significant in terms of his state of mind. That is the same day that it appears that he registered for the Butler rally.
Making it crystal clear what his intentions were when he arrived at that rally. Joining us now to discuss this testimony today and a lot of what Christopher Wray had to say, Kyle Seraphin is here. He's a former FBI agent and the host of the excellent Kyle Seraphin Podcast. Kyle, good to have you back with us, sir.
Hey, Vince. Good to be back with you.
So, this is unusual that you got an FBI director in a position to share the details of an ongoing investigation, but this is a pretty exceptional case, isn't it?
It is. It's more than I expected from him. So kudos to Chris Wray. We'll give him credit where credit is due. He came and answered some questions that I totally expected him to defer on and hide behind the ongoing investigation shield. So good for him for doing that. It tells me that he's got an awful lot of discretion when he wants to do so, and that he doesn't have to abide by the ongoing investigation policy or requirement or protocol whenever he wants to talk about things. So
right.
I think that's also a takeaway.
Yeah, that's an important takeaway, that he makes it up as he goes along. In this case, he's saying he can share information. The American people definitely want to know a lot about this. Andy Biggs, Congressman Andy Biggs, was one of the few lawmakers who concentrated on getting new information out of the FBI director. I was annoyed by so many of the lawmakers who failed to use their time well. Here's Andy Biggs asking about whether or not the gunman did come with the gun or it was bunked at the scene.
The shooter took the gun up with him when he climbed up to the top of the roof, or was it already placed there somewhere?
So that is something that we're drilling into right now that we don't know the answer to yet. I can tell you, which may be relevant, though, to your question, that, and I don't think this has been reported yet, that the weapon had a collapsible stock, which could explain why it might have been less easy for people to observe. Because one of the things that we're finding is people have observed him, the first people to observe him with the weapon were when he was already on the roof, and we haven't yet found anybody with firsthand observation of him with the weapon walking around beforehand. So that doesn't mean he wasn't, obviously, but the collapsible stock is potentially a very significant feature that might be relevant to that.
How is that feature? How is that an important feature? I mean, an AR-15 having a collapsible stock is pretty typical, isn't it?
I think that he's misconstruing what he's trying to say because he's not a firearms guy. That was demonstrated pretty clearly when he was talking to Eric Swalwell about the difference between bolt action and semi-automatic. So Chris Wray's not a gun guy. He claimed that he, likes to shoot guns, but I don't believe him either. I don't believe a lot of the stuff he says. When they say collapsible stock, the odds are they're actually talking about a folding stock, and that is actually a significant modification. There are certain things out there, the SIG MPC series, or the MCX series, rather. You'll find some of these will actually fold in half. There's an adapter you can actually buy for less expensive firearms. It's called the Law Tactical Folder, where you push a button. It was actually designed by a Secret Service agent of all things. And you can actually fold the buffer tube and the stock so that it lays flush and kind of bends backwards along the receiver.
Right.
So for an AR-15, that's going to take, anywhere between 8 and 12 inches of length off. That's pretty significant.
Yeah.
But it does look like he had a full-size barrel. So we're talking about a 16-inch barrel plus another maybe close to 12 inches worth of receiver or 10 inches of receiver. And the adapter actually is another inch long. It's not a small thing to hide.
No.
So I don't know how much that adds to it, but
and his outfit didn't look like he would have been able to conceal a weapon like that, even if it was folded in half. It didn't.
That's totally true. Yeah, I mean, he's wearing shorts, right? He's not dressed like the Columbine guys. I think if you saw somebody in a long black overcoat trying to talk holiday, then we'd have a different opinion about what was going on.
I had the same reaction, though, that you did, which is like Chris Wray doesn't even understand firearms because he said a collapsible stock. That's like a 3-inch at best, like condensing of the stock. That wouldn't actually hide a long gun in any way, and he made that out to be a really big deal. So you think he was probably referring to a folding stock?
That's the most likely piece. Look, like I said, I'll give him credit that he came and he talked about there were 5 pieces of brass collected, which means 5 shots fired that they were able to.
The number was 8.
8, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. I've got it here on my screen here. I'm looking wrong. He said that the guy had minimal contacts in his phone. I think that's interesting. Fits the profile of a loner.
Yeah.
That was worth doing. He also mentioned later on in the testimony that the subject climbed up on the AGR building using mechanical equipment and vertical pipes and not a ladder, which was there were pictures of ladders going around on the 13th and the 14th and the 15th, and the speculation on whether he carried or brought a ladder. So that would also kind of give us some information. So he brought some information. Like, we'll give the guy credit. He said some things about the shooter, more than I would have expected. So good for him.
He confined all of his remarks, though, to the investigation into the shooter in particular. They said they've conducted, I think he said hundreds of interviews, a lot of interviews with witnesses. I would assume a lot of the attendees are a part of that. Certainly many of the members of law enforcement who were there tasked with the security of President Trump in that event. His job, I think you would agree, is not to investigate the Secret Service, but I imagine he's gleaning a lot of information that is highly relevant to the failures that were involved that day.
Yeah, when you start hearing what the witnesses say, it's going to paint a bigger picture of what happened and what didn't happen. I honestly, still to right now, the most credible theory of what happened is probably the one that is available to the public. And Senator Josh Hawley actually pushed out a whistleblower sort of disclosure via letter that said he was told it was too hot on the roof, and Secret Service guys or whoever the protective detail that was supposed to be up on the roof didn't go post because they were uncomfortable. That sounds like the most accurate government assessment that I've ever heard in my entire life. And I'm a guy who spent 12 hours on my feet during Trump's inauguration in the cold, and it was kind of miserable, and I had the wrong shoes. You just do it.
Yeah.
I was out there also for State of the Unions over and over again during Trump's time. And, if you get a chance to sit in a vehicle when it's cold outside, you do that. If you have a chance to go inside, maybe you do that too. It shouldn't be when you're covering one of the most critical areas where someone might be able to sneak up and pull a rifle. If you're on the back end of something where nobody cares where you are anyway and nobody's calling you in on the radio, then maybe it's a little different. But it sounds like the most plausible government excuse is that somebody just got lazy. And isn't that a horrible thought?
That is a horrible thought.
That shallow.
Yeah, that is a horrible thought. One of the things I've been talking about here, Kyle Seraphin, is it's crystal clear that the Biden administration views the Secret Service as a gift to be bestowed. And that's why they didn't give it to RFK. They didn't want him to have the image of the Secret Service around him, making him appear as a legitimate presidential candidate. It was purely done for political reasons that he was left unprotected. And, of course, to drain his campaign coffers to pay for his own security. The other piece is they begrudgingly give Donald Trump Secret Service protection that the Biden administration doesn't really want to, but their hands are tied by law as a former president of the United States. So I really do think that in the case of RFK and definitely Donald Trump, Secret Service protection is like an afterthought for those guys.
I definitely agree with you on that, especially the draining the coffers and worrying about a political rival. RFK, he's got a lot more credibility in the left-leaning space and would definitely draw voters away. So that makes sense. And then on top of it, I mean, we know that House Democrats were trying to pull even Trump's detail away. And Tom Massey was just on Twitter earlier today saying, if you were part of that sort of campaign or push, or if you were sad that the president wasn't killed, I don't think you or your staff should have anything to do with the committees we're going to do on trying to find out the truth on what happened. So I think that's also accurate. But this instinct has been out there. They suddenly just got called to the table, and now they're having to account. And it's just like seeing it. Like when I was in the military, it's the same story. You do something stupid, you think you got away with it. The minute that something really serious happens and there's an inquiry, everybody puckers up and everybody realizes, like, oh no, how am I going to be able to spin this? And can I just get away with a letter of reprimand? And maybe people will forget that I did this, because it's terrible. Yeah, it is. It's certainly terrible. All right, let me go to something else that I want to get your reaction to, the role that the shooter's drone plays in all of this and the way the FBI has been digging into the drone activity. I found this to be fascinating, wondering your perspective as a former FBI guy. Take a listen to this.
Tell me about the drone. You act like you wanted to fill us in on that. Fill us in.
So we have recovered a drone that the shooter appears to have used. It's being exploited and analyzed by the FBI lab. The drone was recovered in his vehicle. So at the time of the shooting, the drone was in his vehicle with the controller. In addition, our investigation has uncovered...
Do you know what time of day he flew it, and if he flew it on the day of the shot?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So in addition, it appears that around 3:50 p.m., 4 o'clock in that window on the day of the shooting, that the shooter was flying the drone around the area
2 hours
for about 11 minutes. I want to be clear, but when I say the area, not over the stage and that part of the area itself, but I would say about 200 yards, give or take, away from that. We think, but we do not know. So again, this is one of these things that's qualified because of our ongoing review, that he was live streaming, viewing the footage from that, again, about 11 minutes in around the 3:50, 4 o'clock p.m. range.
2 hours before, he's flying a drone in the vicinity of the route.
About 200 yards away, yes.
200 yards, okay.
A couple of elements here, Kyle Seraphin. When the Secret Service director says they believe he was live streaming, they don't mean to a public audience. They mean just right back to his controller. Is that what you're gathering? Yeah, absolutely. Same as if you have like there's thermal scopes and things like that, and they will mirror the image inside the scope or the camera over to a to a tablet or to a phone that you want to do. So you can set them up at distances. That all makes sense. I'll tell you what, I've got kind of a novel take on listening to Ray do this, because this is, again, more information than we would expect from the ongoing investigation. Right. I think this is an angle, because not long after that, he talked about how they were under budget. Another kind of set-up question from the Democrats asked him how he was doing on money, and he said in 2024 they got $500 million less than they wanted, and 2025 is looking like they'll even be less than that. Then he made some claims about the number of criminals that they arrested today, which are mostly state and local law enforcement task force officers doing these arrests, when they talk about 150 criminals a day or whatever he was saying. But I actually think he's angling for more funding. Would it be nice to have the FBI drone division? They need to have more room. He also didn't say it explicitly, but he alluded to it, having problems with encrypted devices, that this is an ongoing problem for law enforcement. And this is something that even goes back to Jim Comey's time, 2014 or so, what they refer to as the Going Dark Initiative, where the FBI basically thinks they should have a skeleton key to all end-to-end encryption on the outside chance that someone uses end-to-end encryption to hide a crime. And that would mean essentially the end to privacy and the tools that are available for individuals to have privacy on the outside chance that you screw it up and use it in an inappropriate way. My reaction to was similar to yours. I was kind of grateful that he was complaining about the government can't rifle through all of your private communications. I thought that was a good thing, actually. I know that he's complaining about it, but it gave me some, I don't know, it just gave me some joy, actually. I want to play one last thing for you before we let you go here, Kyle Seraphin. Chip Roy confronted Chris Wray about the standards for FBI agents and said to him, well, a bunch of former agents say you've been lowering them. Take a listen.
Are you familiar with reporting that we have, and we've asked questions to you about this? I'm not sure the result of the questions, that to more, quote, easily accommodate a large pool of available applicants, FBI special agent hiring standards have been relaxed and requirements measurably lowered. This according to a group of former agents who have testified about this and written a report and submitted it to Congress. In addition, specifically, minority people with 20-year careers, one in particular, a minority served for more than 20 years, wrote in this report and submitted it to Congress saying that these standards were in fact lowered, and that in fact, if you were hiring, you were moved off of hiring if you put quality above these kinds of DEI requirements. Do you reject this report? And do you have comments on this report?
I haven't read.
You're aware of the report.
I'm aware of the report. I know that I've read every detail of it, but I can tell you that the claim that we have lowered our standards to be less selective and less competitive is not accurate.
So do you believe these former agents are lying to Congress when they submit a report to Congress stipulating and suggesting otherwise? Or are you saying that they are lying?
I'm saying they're mistaken.
They're mistaken. Kyle Seraphin, you were among those agents, right?
Yeah, no, he's categorically misinterpreting the words of selectivity. So he's probably using that they have some different selection bias, and it has to do with number of points you get for being a disabled vet, and it works if you have a different skin color or a gender ideology under your belt. But at the end of the day, the quality of the applicants coming out probably started even before my class got there, because my class was a mixed bag of people that you would be blown away with. A-listers who had experience overseas doing all kinds of wild stuff, whether they be former CIA analysts, whether they be bureau chiefs working in foreign countries and spoke multiple languages and worked for foreign press and so on. And then you'd also have people like the one example I love to give. I had a guy who was an unarmed security guard at the Detroit Zoo for 3 years. And that was his qualification to be an FBI agent, which is really strange when you have guys who are former Green Berets or Navy SEALs also getting that same job. So it's false. But like I say, he loves to slant around the edges by saying things that don't mean the same thing to you and me.
Right.
I listened to him say the exact same stuff about some of their questions. He was talking about a form where security division was going after people who were Trump supporters. And he said, well, it was created by this person and we stopped using it. It was isolated use only. And it's like, yeah, it was isolated to the security division. We know that's where the form was created. So he does play this game. Chris Wray is dumb, and nobody should ever think otherwise. He's more than capable of walking circles around most of these folks who generally get up there and are looking for a soundbite. They want to go out and do a little speech. They want to get on, whether it be Fox or MSNBC or CNN later. So they do a nice little hit where they say their thing and they set him up for an easy answer, and he walks around them every time. Yeah,
he's a good actor. He's more cunning than his demeanor lets on. Thank you very much. Kyle Seraphin, always good to talk to you, sir. Well, good afternoon to you. It is now 3:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up here in a moment, I'll be sharing with you some of the first audio from today's White House press briefing. Karinge says that, no, Biden's not leaving because he's demented. Well, then why is he leaving? Oh, you got to listen tonight. She's like the Ryan Seacrest of the White House. It's a great tease. You just got to wait until after the break to find out what the president's going to say. Holy cow. So I'll share that with you in a moment. Before I do, Andy's calling in from Front Royal on line 2. Andy, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, how are you doing today?
Excellent.
You were only talking about how easy it would be to conceal what is popularly known as an AR with a foldable stock. And being the owner of such an item, I can tell you that even without disassembly, you put that in what most kids would carry their books to school in.
Yeah, in a backpack.
Very easily. So backpack, well, a day pack, like you give to your kid to take their books to school in. And that's without having to do any disassembly.
Yeah, no, you're right about that, of course. And the point I was making before is that Christopher Wray today said that a collapsible stock was found on the gun. That's what his claim, anyway. And that made the gun especially easy to conceal. That's garbage, Andy. A collapsible stock would not make an AR-15 very easy to conceal. That's a stupid thing to say.
Well, actually, any AR is easy to conceal. It's just how much you want to disassemble it.
Well, yeah, but the collapsible stock. No, I'm sorry, Andy. Concentrate on this point. He didn't say he disassembled the weapon. He separated the lower from the upper. He didn't say anything like that. He said the collapsible stock makes it easy to get. It's stupid. It's not an invisibility cloak. It's just an adjustment that adjusts the butt of the gun some 3 inches or so. It's ridiculous to say that.
Yes, I agree that Director Wray is easily confused on weapon systems.
I think you're right.
Just like as the former director of the Secret Service couldn't give a simple answer on how many cartridges were found on the roof of the building.
I know, and everyone else has the answer. The local police are like, it was 8. The FBI director was like, it was 8. The Secret Service director was like, what building? What are you even talking about? Oh, that event? I don't know anything about that. Nobody's told me anything. No, you're right about that, Andy. Thank you. Andy, I appreciate that. And luckily she resigned this week, thankfully. Glad she's gone. You know who else should be gone? Should have been a long time ago. Karinge frickin' Jean-Pierre. Karinge out today. Now, she didn't, her first act since Joe Biden's decision to get out of the race after the Democrats forced her out, her first public appearance was on The View yesterday, obviously. Her second was in her taxpayer-funded job as the White House press secretary. And here's how the questioning began just moments ago.
The president believes that it's best for the country that he not be in the Oval Office for another 4 years. How can you assure the American people that he's up to be in the office for the next 6 months?
Well, first I would say is that, and I've heard these suggestions out there. This is not an answer to you. This is an answer to the suggestions that I've had. I've heard about him resigning from office. We believe, and any suggestion of that note is ridiculous. It is not what we believe. The president, I just laid out what the president has been able to do in almost 4 years, and it's been successful. He's been able to do more, again, than any president has been able to do in 2 terms. He's been
between 10 and 4, so long as he gets a nap.
Able to do that more in 1 term. And he wants to finish the job that he started.
Please
delivering more historic results.
Please don't finish the job.
For the American people. And look, he didn't step down from campaigning or from running because he didn't believe he can serve in a second term. That is not why.
Oh.
And what I would say, as I just finished my opening, I would say tune in. Tune into what he has to say tonight, and he will lay that out for you all and the American people as to why he made that decision.
So you're saying he believes that he's capable of serving another 4 years, but he just doesn't believe that he can win another 4 years?
But he doesn't think America deserves it. We haven't been good enough.
We'll let the president speak for himself.
And so today, the president believes that he is fully capable of serving in the office that he currently has now and for the next 4.5 years if he wanted to.
Absolutely. And let me just quote from what he said on Sunday in his letter.
She never stops lying. I mean, there's almost something like kind of impressive about it. It's just like, it's just an endless cascade of lies. So you're saying that, let's just pretend that there were no term limits whatsoever. Could he serve for another 30 years? Oh yeah, definitely. He's got 30 years in him, no question. Next, anyone else? Any other questions? This is, he can definitely do it.
It is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term.
Why is it in the best interest of the country that you not run for re-election? Why is that? Why would that be? Can you give us more details on that?
And what the decision that he made on Sunday was about putting country
Of course, it is in the best interest of the country for Joe Biden not to be in office.
First, was about his party, and was about the American people.
Notice the order in which she delivered that. It was about his party, and in a smaller way, it was about the American people.
Again, I would refer you to what he's going to say tonight. He will lay that out, speak for himself, and you will hear directly from the American, from the president.
From the American, from the president, whatever job I'm supposed to be representing, you're going to hear from that guy. So there she is today, speaking out, talking about what we're to expect from Joe Biden tonight. As I mentioned, she went on The View yesterday, which was totally preposterous. Here she is. Alyssa Farah raised the same question you just heard from the Associated Press.
But now calls have gone further, including vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance saying if he's not up to serving 4 more years, can he serve out the rest of his term? How do you respond to that?
I think that's ridiculous. Seriously.
He's ridiculous.
Not me. But what I will say is, like...
You notice the audience didn't really react at all? They're kind of sitting there waiting for the answer. Yeah, what is the answer? That's kind of a good question. We don't like J.D. Vance, but what's the answer to that question?
The president decided to not run for re-election. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's all he decided on. He wants to continue to do the work. 3.5 years of unprecedented historic work.
Yeah, no big deal. It's just an incumbent president who is running for re-election decided with just months ago, you know what? Actually, I'm not going to do it anymore. That's it, she says. You shouldn't take any more questions on that subject. No, actually, it seems like a big deal. It seems like a really big deal that, he was running and now he's not, and he hasn't actually explained it. So if he can't do it for another 4, why can he do it for a few more months?
I think that shows what he's capable of doing. I think that shows how important his leadership is. And moments ago, I talked about how he was able to reach across the aisle and do things in bipartisanship in the political environment that we're in. We have so much more work to do, and he understands that. He's going to speak to this in about 24 hours or so, and he'll lay that out. But this president is ready to continue to lead this country in a historic way, and that stands.
It was a morning show she did, so she was off by at least like 8 hours or something. Elizabeth Hasselbeck used to be a host on The View and somehow escaped that fate. She was on Fox News, and she spoke to Martha McCallum about what she witnessed in the stupid conversation they had with Karinge.
Yes, and those questions should have come out today. Unfortunately, it was a misuse of the platform of the View table, which, reminding everyone, is called The View, meaning their view only. Where were the questions? Absolute misuse. Disappointing, not surprising, of course, that there was no follow-through. Joe Biden did the right thing, handing it over to someone who could do the job. Why can't he? Where was that question? Not there on purpose, we'd say. Count this as the first advertisement for the left when it comes to Kamala Harris's campaign trail. This is her main stage. This is where it all begins. And unfortunately, the very stage and table that calls for choice all the time wants to sit there and, by the mouth of Whoopi Goldberg, a friend of mine, and I tell this to her face to face, is bullying her viewers into voting for Kamala based on the fact that she's a female. I think that's absolutely ignorant strategy, and I hope the women who are watching either decide to tune out or actually tune in to what's going on at that table. It's absolute brainwashing instead of abandonment of what they have there is an opportunity to ask KGP some actual questions and no follow-ups. It was really disappointing, not surprising.
And totally typical. It's The View. The audience normally clapping like seals no matter what comes out of the mouths of people like Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg. They don't. It's like Trump bad. Woo. You remember Joy Behar, the old audio of her talking about how much she loves Donald Trump, how great he is. Yeah, from years ago, back when the whole left loved Donald Trump, and now not so much. They hate him. They think he's Satan incarnate. At least that's what they say. And everyone, woo! They all clap over on The View. Elizabeth Hasselbeck having survived all of that, and she's right. Like the whole concept is like she said, bullying people into supporting Kamala. Isn't the reinvention of Kamala Harris like the most hilarious, but, most recent example of the media's propaganda efforts? Nobody liked Kamala Harris when she was running for president in the first place, when she was running back in 2020. In California, she polled like at 0%. She was not popular at all. She was as popular as arresting wakeboarders off the coast. She was as popular as dumping sand into skate parks. It was not that popular, actually, in California. And she's really doing it. She's trying to run right now. And the media, which spent the last few weeks all of a sudden finding its ability to scrutinize a Democrat. Did you notice that? So the entire Biden presidency, we don't get any meaningful scrutiny. We get all this like kid glove coverage of everything Biden does, to include killing off American troops, to destroying the economy, to collapsing our borders. They would carry the water as the Biden White House would be like, oh yeah, our border's collapsing? It's actually Trump's fault. Yeah, it's Trump's fault. Yeah, Trump stopped the legislation that would have saved the border. That's so awful what Trump did. They would carry every one of these stupid talking points to the American people. And the American people haven't been buying them. In case you haven't noticed, they haven't been buying them. They've said, actually, things are a lot worse now with Biden in the Oval Office than they were with Trump. And I prefer Trump, actually. And then when they realized, and it was all filtered through the lens of Trump, when they realized that Biden was headed for a landslide loss to Donald Trump and that Trump was heading back to the Oval Office next year, they gave him the hook. The media was all in. They joined forces with Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama and Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. And suddenly they became the most cynical, aggressive journalists imaginable. We don't believe anything coming out of the mouths of our government right now. This guy is not fit to be in office. This is a total disaster. And then they chased him out, didn't they? They spent weeks doing it. Weeks. After that debate, it was all triggered. It was off to the races. And now Kamala's coming in. Kamala. It's the Kamala campaign. And as Kamala begins her campaign, Have you noticed that you're not seeing any meaningful scrutiny of her time in office? You're not seeing any meaningful examination of how she's failed us, the role that she has played in wrecking the country over these last 3.5 years. No, instead, you're getting the opposite. Instead, you're getting a masterclass in gaslighting, in Orwellian newspeak, in reinventing the story of Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is now a wonderful person. She was a member of sorority. She's a dancer. She's joyful. She loves talking to people. She's a big hit with the kids. She was never in charge of the border. In fact, her responsibility was never to tackle the border crisis. And let's be honest, it's not really a crisis. It's more of a challenge. It's happening before your very eyes, including from some reporters who already declared that the border was her problem. The border story is just the best example today, where they're now insisting that she was never the border czar, they say, which is this hilarious, like, ridiculous game that they're playing, which is that, oh, she never actually had the title border czar. Yeah, there's no, we don't do that. In the U.S. government, we don't actually have an official title called anything czar. But it's shorthand. It's the way you refer to someone if they're the drug czar or the green czar or the border czar. It's the person under whom you place that portfolio. That's the way we talk about these people in the United States. And so when Joe Biden comes along and says, I've assigned Kamala Harris to get to the bottom of this border problem we've got, what are we to conclude about her job? She's the border czar. She's the border czar. And it wasn't just people on the right who were saying this. It was the news media. The news media was saying that Kamala Harris is now the border czar. And suddenly, the very same outlets and the very same reporters in some cases are now saying she was never the border czar. Never. Right? Are you kidding? The internet exists. We can see your old coverage. You wrote it right here in your publication. What happened? Oh, she's the nominee now, or she's going to be. And as a result, you've got to hide all of the problems, all of her liabilities. And that's very much underway. We're going to talk about that coming up with Rob Law, the border czar thing. And we're going to talk about Kamala Harris coming up with Harmeet Dillon. We've got a lot to get to, and we've got your calls ahead as well. Well, the White House press briefing continues. Karinge babbling on right there at the lectern. And the deuce is now loose. Here's Peter Doocy, his exchange with Karinge just moments ago.
Well, it would seem that people in this White House knew that President Biden was slipping, and it was hidden from the American people. So who ordered White House officials to cover up a declining president?
I know that that is a narrative that you love, and
in
wait,
10 days,
hold on.
he did a press conference at NATO. I'm in it. There's all these things that I need to finish, and then 10 days later, I'm dropping out.
Okay, wait, you're asking me like multiple questions here. Let me wait. First of all, there's been no cover-up. I want to be very clear about that. I know that's the narrative that you all want. Wait, no, you can't even. Okay.
I've been with President Biden for 5 years.
Are you going to let me answer the question?
Would you at least admit that the debate was not...
She's routinely lied about his health checkups, right? This is the same woman who's routinely lied about that. And then whenever she's caught, she says, oh, my bad. Oh, there's been no cover-up, right?
Wait, can I answer the question?
Yes.
All right. Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. To your first question, it is not a cover-up. I know that is the narrative that you all want. It is not. I'm going to say this again.
What a liar.
And you're going to hear directly from the president. I hope you listen tonight. I think it's going to be incredibly
powerful.
powerful.
White House reporter might skip it. What a stupid, condescending statement.
Important, the Oval Office. Presidents, as you know, when they make speeches from the Oval Office, it's because there are important moments that they want to directly make sure that the American people hear from them.
He couldn't do it Sunday because someone else had to write the letter and then sign it for him.
Obviously going to be done in prime time. I would listen to the president. And then what I will say is that it is not easy making a decision that the president made on Sunday. It is just not. It is not.
Oh, really?
And as you all reported, it is historic. It is unusual. This is not the norm. And making a decision like that for someone who has been in public service for 54 years, U.S. Senator for 36.
It's so hard to give up power, she says. Stunning and brave. Stunning and brave. Stay with us. I've got more with Peter Doocy mixing it up. He asks about the border czar, so we have to get to that, of course. A lot more ahead.